Grab some solar lights from Dollar Tree to create this outdoor decor. For the first piece, I'm going to grab a pool noodle as well. I'm going to cut this into small 1-inch sections. And then I'm going to paint 3 of those sections a really dark black color. Now I'm going to put it all together. I picked up this really heavy metal candle holder from a thrift store. I'm going to use a little glue to attach each of the pool noodle pieces to where the candles would normally go. Then I can grab my solar lights, pull off that bottom, I don't need that, and I can glue each of the lights into the center of the pool noodle. This is going to help them stay in place really well. Now I can put this on an outdoor table, and it has a really elegant feel and gives off a nice soft glow. I picked up this lamp at a thrift store. The first thing I need to do is pull the wiring out. Now I'm going to take it outside and spray paint it with a textured metallic spray paint. This is going to take a couple of coats, and I'm going to let it dry in between each one. Now I can put the shade back on, and instead of a light bulb, I'm going to put the top of a solar light right in the center. I'm just going to use some hot glue to attach it in there really well. And I have a beautiful lamp that I can use in my outdoor space. Grab a solar light, pull off the stake, we don't need that part. Then use some hot glue to add it to a metal sconce. I picked these up at the thrift store. They're nice and heavy, they're going to work great outside. Then use a screw hook in a fence or a deck and hang the sconces outside. It gives beautiful ambient lighting. I hope this inspired you to grab some Dollar Tree solar lights and create some beautiful outdoor decor. Grab a Dollar Tree solar light and one of those tall glass vases. Put the base of the solar light into the vase and then fill around it with some decorative stones. Add the top and use these on an outdoor table to add some soft lighting. Remove the top of a solar light and wrap some floral wire around it to create a swing. Place this inside a paper lantern and use these in your outdoor space. Grab a few small clay pots. They can even have the soil in them. Place a solar light into the middle and fill around it with stones to hold it in place. You can use these small pots to line a walkway. Grab a larger planter, place a few solar lights in it, and then fill around it with rocks. It's a great way to add light to a corner where solar lights don't naturally stick into the ground. So I picked up a couple of these dollar store solar lights and I'm going to take them apart. I just need that kind of crystal plastic part and the top. So I'm going to cover the light bulb on the bottom and then I'm going to cover the solar panel on top and then use a craft knife to cut around it so you get perfectly straight lines. This is a 7-inch basic embroidery hoop. So I'm going to untwist this screw and put that aside, and then both pieces of the hoop plus that light need to be spray painted. I'm taking them outside and I am adding a couple coats of a matte black spray paint. Make sure they're fully dry to the touch, and now we can assemble. So first we want to remove the painter's tape so that these solar lights work. On the clear plastic part, there are 2 little clips that help attach it to the top. And I'm just going to take some floral wire and wrap it around each one of those clips. Wrap it nice and tight so it hugs the plastic closely. And then I'm able to screw the black part back on top, and the wire is still going to hang out either side. I picked this chain up at the craft store. It is actually in the jewelry section. I'm going to thread the chain through the screw and tighten it about halfway. The solar light is going to hang from the inside hoop. So I'm just going to use my floral wire and wrap it around that hoop. I want to make sure it's centered so that when I'm holding it up, the light hangs right in the middle. Now I can put this middle hoop, the smaller hoop, back inside the larger one. Now once everything's in place, I can tighten this screw and it should hold together really well with tension. I made a couple of these dollar store solar light pendants to hang on my deck.
I'm going to grab me some solar lights. Next, head over to the hardware store. I'm going to grab me about 100 feet of nylon rope. First thing I got to do is blow up this dollar beach ball. Then I got to get out some Portland cement. Make sure it's not concrete, but cement. You want it actually really thin because we need to coat that rope. Now, on that beach ball, just start laying that rope. You're just going to start roping it all the way around. Once you get to the end, what you're going to do is tuck that last bit in underneath the rope. It's going to hold it in place. Then what we can do is move on to possibly adding a little bit more cement. Make sure you cover all that rope. We want it to stiffen up as best we can. Let it sit for a couple hours once we get it covered. Once it's covered, take a knife and just puncture the beach ball. Once we get it all the air out, just go ahead and pull it through one of the bigger openings between the ropes. Now, I want to clean it up. Took a little bit of a plastic fork and just clean up the edges. Don't want anything flaking off. Take a squirt bottle and start squirting all the string, and you're just going to powder it with the cement. Just keep doing that all over. What this does is make it thicker and strengthen it up. We're going to grab that dollar light again. Take out the bottom part. You're going to turn it around, put it in, and that's what's going to stick into the ground. Go ahead and put it right into the ground, right in the area you want to put it. And then you're going to take your string orb and you're going to put it right over the light, right in the middle, and lay it on down. Once it's in place, it just looks really good, just sitting there. It's waterproof because it's on the nylon rope and it's made out of cement. But once night comes, look at it light up. It is amazing to see from your yard and from the street.
We're going to start by cutting the 4x4 down 28 inches. Next, we're going to take the post cap out of the box and prep it for painting. Decided to use some spray paint on them to get the look that I was going for. So I'm covering up the solar panel, and then I'm covering up the glass frame around the light. Next, using a hacksaw, we're going to cut down the angle bar into 4 pieces, 24-inch pieces. You want to use a hacksaw with multiple tiny teeth because it makes the cutting process a lot easier. With the angle bars cut, I'm setting up this spray shelter so that I can spray paint the angled bars as well as the post cap. I'm painting the 4x4 post with an exterior solid base paint by Behr called Catalina Coast. This is where you're going to glue the angled bars. You want to make sure to leave that ½ inch from the top of the post. This will ensure that the post cap will lay flat on the surface. With the spray paint dry, I was then able to use a 5-in-1 tool and remove the painter's tape and place the post cap at the top of the pole. With my solar post complete, I dug a hole about 6 to 8 inches deep so that I can place my posts in the ground. And I also used some quick setting concrete around the pole so that they would be nice and sturdy. I love the way this turned out. This completely transformed my walkway.
Here are a few ways you can add ambiance to your yard by using solar lights. This taper candle holder I found at a thrift store. I added silicone to each holder spot and then added the top of a solar light to each one. I let it dry for 24 hours and it's ready to go outside. To make some light up address numbers for your home, using a stencil or freehand, you can paint or use a Sharpie to draw on your numbers. Add some glass rocks or any decoration inside you like. Add some water as it will amplify the light reflection. Pull your solar light apart and you only need the top piece. Place that inside the lid of the mason jar and screw the lids back on. To make a terracotta pot lighthouse, you'll need 3 different size terracotta pots. This is so they'll stack easily. Start by painting your terracotta pots whatever color you like. Pull the solar light apart and cut the little stem off the solar light to make it flat. Add silicone to the base of the solar light and put it on the top of the terracotta pots for your light. Using some more paint or Sharpies, draw on your windows or any other decorations you'd like. Once it's dry, you're all set to go. You can put it outside and enjoy it.
To begin this project, choose your solar light set. Next, using 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch board, measure and cut 8 8-inch sections. Using a rad nailer, I secured these together, creating a square, but if you don't have access to this tool, you can always use a screw. Next, decide how long you want your light to be. We chose to use a 1 by 2 by 30 inch board. After sanding, find the middle of the board and mark off 5 points. We spaced ours 5 inches apart. Using a paddle bit, drill through the center of the board. After finding the center on the side piece and the length board, line them up and then secure. Once everything is square, measure your final 4 boards to make a hollow rectangle. Cut and secure these as you did the side squares. Finally, attach 2 eye hooks to either side to use for hanging. After my eye hooks were secure, I attached 3 feet of black chain link to each side of my chandelier. You can leave this raw wood and coat with a polyurethane to protect it from the outdoors, but I chose to use a satin black spray paint. Once my spray paint was dry, it was time to secure my solar lights. This took a little force, but warming up the plastic in the sun can make the tube more pliable. I chose to cut down my tubes, but this is of course personal preference. I have a pergola out back where I hung my new chandelier from 2 screw hooks. I absolutely love the new ambiance it creates, not only at nighttime, but it also adds a designer touch to my outdoor space.
Have you ever wondered how you can put old cans to use other than just recycling them? And you're going to begin by cutting your clean can. And I use tin snips for this. When I say it's the hardest part, it's because it's just kind of hard to cut in a circle when you're limited. You want to be left with a nice sheet of that metal. Once you've got it flattened out, you're going to want to cut the metal into rectangles, and the size is really up to you. Next, you're going to set aside those metal pieces and cut the coat hanger into, for me, based on the size of, I then took a pair of pliers, also the snips, and made a bend at the top. Think of it like a stand for a garden flag. To me, that's what it really resembled, so that I could slide on the little metal pieces that I'd made. I took them outside and stuck them in the top of a box to paint. This is a really easy way to paint something without making a huge mess. I chose black so that my letters would stand out. Once your little tags are dry, you can use paint if you're skilled, or a bright colored Sharpie like this silver one here, to add plant names. Once the Sharpie or paint is dry, you can use these tags indoors or out. If you're going to use them outdoors, I would also suggest a nice clear coat finish after you're done labeling so that it doesn't wear off in the rain. But it's a perfect way to know what plant is what, indoors or out.
Grab tin cans and a napkin for this brilliant porch decor. I washed 3 tin cans from the recycling, removed the labels, and scuffed up the surface with a wire brush. I wiped clean with a cloth and spray painted the outside of each can with Rust-Oleum paint and primer white spray paint. While that was drying, I spray painted some metal chain black to match the black hook and chain that I had left over from a hanging planter. I set that aside to dry. Once the tin cans were dry, I used a small drill bit to drill 3 holes evenly spaced along the top edge of the tin can. I drilled holes in the same spots at the bottom edge and the same spots again at the very bottom of the tin can. In total, there were 9 holes in each tin can, and I did that for all 3 cans. Then I cut the napkins into smaller pieces and cut around the birds. I painted outdoor Mod Podge on the tin can, placed the napkin pieces on, and sealed it with more Mod Podge. I carefully placed the bird on top and painted more Mod Podge on top to seal it. I did this for all 3 tin cans, then used a nail to poke through the holes I drilled to make sure the glue didn't close them over. I let the cans dry. 24 hours is ideal. Next, I placed a petunia into each of the tin cans and hung it on my deck for the most beautiful hanging planter. Nobody would guess that this is made from recycled tin cans and napkins. I hope this inspired you to create your own Decoupaged tin can hanging planter. I saved 18 tin cans from the recycling. I used a can opener to remove the top of the can, and then I cut the rest open with tin snips. I washed both sides with soap, water, and a scrub brush, and then I dried it. I placed a strip of double-sided foam tape along one side of the tin and then cut it so it was the same width as the tape. Then I cut it into smaller sections about 3/4 inch length. I peeled the back of the tape and placed the tin on a rubber inflated ball. After the middle row, I added rows alternating between the top and the bottom sides. When I got to the more curved part on the ball, I left a little triangle space between each tile, and then I cut my tiles in half on an angle, used those pieces to fill in the blanks. I glued it to a thrifted candlestick, and now I have the most gorgeous gazing ball, perfect for my garden. I hope this inspires you to get creative with tin cans and make your own gazing ball. I grabbed a corrugated cardboard box and a tin can from my recycling for this elegant home decor. I cut the cardboard about 1/4 inch taller than the tin can. I wet a tea towel and pressed it onto the top of the cardboard to make it damp, not wet. This helped to loosen it so I could pull the top layer off and expose the corrugated part. Then I flipped it over and painted the top 1/2 inch and top edge antique white using acrylic paint. I flipped it back and painted the whole corrugated surface in antique white, and then I started blending with the other colors. I used a sponge to add black, gray, and I spray painted some silver for a metallic touch. I added more antique white on top and blended it all together using my paintbrush. Once dried, I wrapped it around the tin can, hot glued it together, and now I have a knockoff galvanized zinc vase, and you'd never know it came from the recycling bin. I hope this inspired you to dig into your recycling and create your own galvanized zinc-inspired vase.
We're going to need 5 soda cans. Make sure they are rinsed out pretty well and dry on the inside. Now we're going to go and take a razor blade. This is one that I have that is a handheld one, and these are so much better to go and use than just a normal blade. Go and cut the top of the can. After you have it at least half of the way cut, you can go and take a pair of scissors and then go and cut off the top of this can. Now, as you're cutting any of these cans, always keep in mind that this does have a sharp lip to it, so try to keep your hands away from it and try to go nice and slow as well. Go and turn your scissors or your blade, and then go and cut off the bottom. Any scraps that you do end up having from this craft, make sure to go and recycle. The bottoms, the tops, and pretty much any little bit of this can is recyclable after it's cut. Now go and clean any of this residue that might be in any of the cans, and after they're dried off, we're going to go and flatten them slightly. Go and take the cut piece of aluminum, fold it, make sure you don't really leave a mark in the center. Now we're going to go and cover all of these with just some sort of cloth, and we're just going to apply a small amount of heat to it with an iron or anything that you have like that. It does help to go and flatten it out just slightly. Now let's go and draw some leaves. Do these of different sizes. It should look kind of like what a teardrop looks like, and cut them out. You can fit anywhere between 5 to about 10 of these on every one of these sheets of aluminum. As you're cutting these, go nice and slow. The edges can be very sharp on the can pieces that are cut. Now that we have all of our leaves cut out, let's go and mark it down the center with a metal tool that we have. Go and put some little branches off for the leaf that's there. And it's probably a good idea to go and have a reference up. There's a couple of ways that you can go and do this. You can either go and take this and fold it into the middle up. I will be using these for the end of my longer pieces, or you could just have it like this where it's just slightly curved. Now that all of our leaves are shaped, let's go and cut some floral wire. I'm leaving some of these pieces a bit longer than honestly what I'm going to need, and that is more than fine because if I want to make these larger, I have at least the wire to do so. Now let's take our glue, use a very generous amount of it, put it onto the back end of one of your leaves, and then go and stick down the wire onto this piece. You might have to hold it in place for a couple of seconds, and now for this one, this is one of the pieces that I folded upwards, and I'm sticking this onto the end of this piece of wire that is a lot longer than the other ones that I'm using, and it's about 2.5 feet long. Now let's go and continue to glue down these pieces, and this glue does dry pretty quick, so it took about 1.5 hours for it to be fully dry. Now you can go and spray paint it. I'm starting off with just a very light green base. And after that green base is done, I'm going over everything with a black that is very light. Then I'm just going to wait for this to dry. And really didn't take too long. I did this on a nice and hot day. So after this side is dried, which I honestly still wanted some of the can to be showing at the bottom, I think it looks kind of cool. Now onto the other side, use green spray paint first, a small amount of yellow. And then at the edges of every one of these, use a very light amount of black spray paint. This is going to make it look a bit more plant-like, and it gives it just so much color, and these look so cool after they've dried. And I waited about a day just so everything was fully and totally dried and didn't come apart. Now I'm taking the larger leaves that I have, putting them at the top here, and I'm kind of just going down from there, and continuing to go and attach all of these leaves. Now these pieces have a bunch of wire here, which is fine. I'm just going to cut them, size them a little bit, and then again, go and twist these down. Let's go and grab some wooden dowels. We're going to go and take the wire and twist it around. And make sure it does hang down a good amount. You're going to take at least 2 or maybe 3 of these and have them on wooden dowel. Try to get it centered or close to the center. Now go and fill up your metal tin or your planter. Take the wooden dowel, go and bury it into the dirt that you have here. After it's buried, go and move the pieces of leaves around. Just go and space it slightly, make it look a little bit poofy, and also have some of these pieces hang down. Here's what it looks like so far. It looks pretty cool. And I have this one extra piece that is off to the side, so I'm taking one more wooden dowel, going and twisting it, and like I did with the other one, burying it into the dirt. Now this is what it looks like after it is done, and it honestly looks pretty real. You wouldn't even believe that this was made with aluminum cans. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!
I headed to my local dollar store and headed right to the cleaning aisle. There I picked up some essentials like a wooden scrub brush, some power wash, some rubber gloves, things like multi-purpose cleaner, some nice air fresheners, and then as well I made sure to grab a pretty candle, some dish towels, and then after I was done there, I took a stop to my local grocery store and picked up a 6-pack of paper towel and a 12-pack of toilet paper. We're going to begin with the paper towel. This is going to be our base, so this is why we want a good sturdy 6-pack. Then we're going to put our 12-pack of toilet paper on top, and then I'm also going to throw in a box of Kleenex. Once these are all together, this is the Wonder Dots. These are going to be used to hold everything in place. These little glue dots are amazing for getting things to stick where you want them to. Make sure it's nice and secure, and then I'm going to add in the glue dots onto the Kleenex box. When you're putting down the toilet paper, you want to make sure that you leave this nice edge here. So the edge is what we're going to be using to put our things on. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a dry fit, just placing everything on just to make sure it fits nicely. And then once I have it arranged where I like it, I'm going to add the glue dots to the bottoms of all my accessories here. So I'm going to go along making sure I put them in place and that they're nice and attached to the paper towel. Once I have these all in place here, I'm going to add in my other fun extras like the wooden scrub brush, and then I'm going to go ahead as well and add in some pretty ribbon, and we're going to dress this up. So I'm going to start at the bottom and then put a ribbon around the top tier as well, and then add in a little piece of decorative lace just to add in that nice embellishment. Once this is done, I'm going to come in and add in my last few remaining items like the dish towels, the rubber gloves, and just to make it a little bit more pretty. And we're going to wrap that bottom ribbon around those again. To finish it off, I'm going to add in a cute little bow here, and I'm going to use the same ribbon that I put around the cake, but as well I'm going to add in a little bit of extra linen white ribbon just to give it a little bit more oomph. Once that ribbon is tied, I'm going to go ahead and use a glue dot again and just stick that right in the middle. With my ribbon attached, this is my final project. So this is a great housewarming gift for somebody who's moving out for the first time, or maybe a child that's heading off to college for the first time. You can actually really give this gift to anyone, and it doesn't actually cost a ton of money. I would say the total cost for me here was about $45. I really hope you enjoyed this project. Thank you so much for tuning into Hometalk, and we'll see you again on another video.
I'm going to remove all of the insides, including the glass. Next, I'm going to paint the frames. While the frames are drying, I want to paint some wood pieces that I picked up. These are a little thin, so I'm going to use some wood glue to adhere two together. To make the slats in my lantern, I'm going to use these little wood stir sticks. With a coat of paint on all the pieces, it's time to start putting them together. Now that the frames are together, I want to start adding the stir sticks. I want to add a small rope handle. I have a little piece of copper pipe that's going to work perfectly with some thick rope to do that.
Grab 2 of these mirrors and then pick up some wooden dowel rods. Spray paint the dowel rods black and let them dry completely. Squeeze a small dollop of clear adhesive glue to the bottom of one of the dowel rods and then press it into one of the corners of the mirror octagon. Take your second mirror octagon and flip it upside down. Squeeze a small dollop of clear adhesive onto each corner of the mirror bottom. Flip it back over and carefully align the corners of the mirror with the tops of the wooden dowel rods. Let's decorate this mirrored lantern for fall. You can decorate this mirror lantern for Christmas too.
Pick up a couple solar lights from Dollar Tree, then grab an empty pickle jar. I'm gonna start by washing this pickle jar really well. I'm just gonna soak it in hot water with soap. It's gonna get all the sticky label off the outside and it's gonna get that pickle smell out of the inside. Then I'm gonna take the dry jar and I'm gonna add pieces of twine to it. To finish off the outside, I'm wrapping a thick piece of rope around the top of the jar. Now I'm gonna fill it with some glass beads. Just pull off the stick that goes in the ground and place the light right in the jar.
Start by mixing together 1 cup of Epsom salt plus 1 tablespoon of clear or white glitter. Apply a thin layer of Mod Podge onto each glass vase and then sprinkle some of the fake snow on top. Continue this process around each vase. Showcase this adorable display with some battery-operated tea light candles and some string lights.
Grab an assortment of frames. Remove any packaging, paper, or cardboard from the frames, as well as the frame glass. Using a strong adhesive glue, take an 8x10 frame and glue one short side of the frame to the long side of a 4x6 frame. Glue the remaining sides of the frames together. Use some painter's tape to hold the glued sides together until dry. Next, take 2 of the 5x7 frames and glue to the top of the box base, angled together on top of the frame box. Once the first half of the roof is glued and secured, glue the other 2 5x7 frames to the base. Once dry, I gave my greenhouse a couple of light coats of hunter green spray paint. Take some faux Christmas greenery stems, trim them to the height of the roof, and hot glue the stems to the base of the roof line. Add some holly berries and leaves at the roof line to cover the bottoms of the stems. Take a lightweight ornament and glue it by its string to the front opening of the greenhouse.
Quick trip to my local Dollarama. Separate the layers, cut the napkin so that you have enough to cover the body of the jar. Now I'm using some clear glue mixed with a tiny amount of water, paint it onto the side of the glass jar. Then lay down the paper nap and then using a piece of scrunched up plastic wrap, use that to pat down the napkin and eliminate any wrinkles that way. Draw around the lid because that will be the right size and cut out the piece of napkin, stick it to the bottom of the jar in the same way. Using the same process, cut out a circle for the top and a little strip for the edge and stick it in place. When it was dry, I decided to give it 2 coats of a gloss varnish. I have taken a battery operated puck light and stuck it into the lid of the glass jar.
Stretch out a balloon and then blow it up. Now take a torn piece of tissue paper and get it wet with some water. Gently lay it against the side of the blown up balloon and smooth it out. Continue layering pieces until the entire surface is covered. Then let it sit until it is completely dry. In a small bowl, mix together some regular glue and water, about half and half, to create a thin glue mixture. Generously brush the glue mixture onto the outside of the tissue paper covered balloon. Then press an additional layer of tissue paper pieces to the outside of the balloon. Pick up some gold and silver paper feathers at your local dollar store. Apply some glue mixture to the back of each feather and press it onto the outside of the balloon. Then place more layers of tissue paper pieces on top of the feathers and adhere with more of the glue mixture. Now the most fun part. Once the glue is completely dry, gently pop the balloon with a pin. Turn on a battery-operated faux pillar candle and place it inside your tissue paper lantern.
I grabbed some mirror paint and thrifted light fixtures. I added a splash of vinegar to a spray bottle with water and lightly sprayed the inside of the glass light fixture. Next, I sprayed the mirror paint on the inside and drained the extra water and paint out. I sprayed the light fixture base black. Once dry, I painted antique gold rub and buff on it, leaving some of the black showing. Once dry, I added battery fairy lights.
I'm going to stick these grasses and weeds to this glass. Cut off these extra bits on the bottom. Now I'm going to stick the tissue paper to the vase. I'm going to use a glue stick and then just rolling it, pulling it tight on this side, some more glue down and gently stick that in place too. I'm going to go around and just trim .
I sourced a couple things from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to be using the Rust-Oleum milk paint. We are going to add our hot glue, put it into the corner. So we're going to do this in all 4 corners. So once that kind of sets, we're going to flip it over and do the other side. We are going to be taking our smaller pieces and we're going to be creating an X shape. And then I'm going to come in with my hot glue gun. We are going to glue these together,
painting it the same color as we did the other pieces. We are going to hot glue. All right, so we're gonna let this dry here for a moment. And that's where this comes into place. Just need this piece. We're gonna clip off this piece. We're gonna paint it. So now that this is all glued and dried, I'm gonna take a little bit of hot glue and I'm gonna put it in the hole. Now that we've attached the tumbling tower pieces, so I can go over the edges.
I came across these 2 disheveled lampshades and I ripped off all the outside parts of the lampshade, the fabric and the trim. I took the 2 lampshades and I stacked them on top of each other. And then to secure them, I used some just little white zip ties, and then I used some scissors and just cut off the excess of the zip tie. Next, I took this rub and buff in the shade European Gold, and using just a paint cloth, I just rubbed it on. Then I came in with some twine and I tied it around the bottom, and then working the twine up and around, I went around the outside of the lampshade several times, making sure to bring the twine back through so that I didn't have that extra piece of twine in the middle. I went around several times until I got the desired thickness that I wanted for my twine and tied it back off again at the bottom. Then I fanned out the twine, and then I repeated this process intermittently around the lampshade.
We all need toilet bowl plungers accessible, but we don't like to look at them. The first thing I'm doing is straightening the pool noodle. I'm cutting the pool noodle to slightly longer than the length of the plunger handle. With a small wooden dowel cut to size, I'm twisting it to push through one side of the pool noodle. Now I'm choosing a flower pot that fits the size of the plunger bottom. The flower pot opening is being placed on top of some foam core board, then traced and cut so it fits along the inside ridge of the flower pot. I'm using both an X-Acto knife, then scissors to get the fit just right. Now I'm placing the pool noodle in the middle of the foam core circle, tracing the shape and cutting it out so the bottom of the pool noodle can slip snugly through it. I'm placing them both inside the pot to check the fit and trimming where needed. Then setting it down on a paper-covered floor since this next step is quite messy. Using some expanding insulating spray foam, I'm spraying the top of the pool noodle to create a small rounded mound on top. I'm also spraying some foam onto plastic shaped like rounded raindrops. I added an extra layer to achieve the roundness. Now that the foam is dry, I'm rounding off the top of the pool noodle foam with a large knife so it has a smooth dome transition to the original pool noodle. Using an X-Acto knife, I'm cutting long slits from top to bottom about an inch apart and making 2 additional cuts on each side angled towards the center cut. The triangle shapes are being removed, so I'm left with slightly rounded pointy ridges along all sides of the pool noodle resembling a cactus. You'll want the ridges a little on the thinner side. Next, I'm making cactus arms. The smaller foam pieces are being further shaped into teardrop shapes with one rounded end. Using a knife, then I'm cutting and shaping them with the same kind of ridges. Next, I'm stirring some drywall compound and adding a little water to help soften it up, then icing all the cactus shapes from top to bottom. I found a skim coat on the foam, followed by even more coverage worked best. Once the compound completely covers the cactus, I'm dipping a paintbrush into water, then brushing the compound to smooth out the texture. I'm using the same treatments on the cactus arms as well, so they match. Now that the top coat is dry after about 3 days, it's time to paint the cactus. I'm using 2 tones of green called Park Bench and Conservatory by Fusion Mineral Paint to simulate realistic cactus colors. The large cactus and smaller shapes are being completely painted in the darker green first. Once dry, I'm brushing on the lighter green along each ridge, then spraying it with water and blending the light green into the dark green with a paintbrush. Just remember, if you don't get it right the first time, you can always repaint and try again. You'll get the hang of it very quickly. Now I'm creating faux sand by mixing 2 paint tones into a sandy tone, then adding Fresco by Fusion Mineral Paint, which is a texturizing powder, until I get a thicker oatmeal texture. With the pot temporarily removed, I'm dabbing the texture mixture onto the foam core surrounding the cactus until I get a lumpy look that resembles real sand. More is better this round. To add a little more detail to the sand, I'm splattering on 2 tones of watery brown paint by flicking the paintbrush against a finger. Now I'm weathering the clay pot by painting it with a watered down coat of raw silk, then spraying it with water and wiping most of it off, leaving a lime washed look. With the big cactus now inside the flower pot, I'm cutting the ends of each cactus arm to shape it to the big cactus, then inserting small wooden sticks into each. Hot glue is being used to secure the arms to the body. I'm now touching up any paint that got knocked off. To create cactus prickles, I'm cutting bristles off a chip brush onto a sheet of paper. Using a paintbrush, I'm dabbing generous Mod Podge spots along the ridges of the cactus body and arms, then sticking the bristles on top. And you are left with a whimsical and impossibly cute cactus that completely hides the toilet bowl plunger until you need it. Simply lift the cactus to grab the plunger. I love how realistic this cactus looks thanks to those added prickles and its sandy desert style base. Adding a few rocks and some Spanish moss makes it look like the real thing. And since most bathrooms don't have exceptional light for real plants, this gives you the look without watering a thing. I hope this inspires you to grab a pool noodle to hide your own toilet bowl plunger with a one-of-a-kind cactus of your own. Thanks for watching Hometalk, and we'll catch you next time.
Grab some mini terracotta pots and string lights to make this easy fall-themed decor. Start by laying a strip of washi tape across the sides and bottom of one of your pots, leaving enough on each side to tuck the ends underneath. Remove the strip and lay on a cutting board. This will serve as your template for the rest of the strips. Once you have all of your pieces cut, lay them across the pots, smoothing them down and tucking the ends underneath for a neat effect. Now it's time to add your string lights. If the hole at the bottom of your pots is too small to fit the bulb, you can easily widen it by inserting the blade of a scissor and gently twisting to enlarge the hole. Insert the bulb and use a hot glue gun to attach the plastic portion of the light to the base of the pot.
To start, grab 3 terracotta pots. Then grab an old flannel and button it up. Flip it over and cut off any excess fabric and attach to the pot with Mod Podge. Then grab the top pot and paint it white. Flip it over and paint the top rim yellow. Then hot glue on some straw. Next, hot glue 2 buttons on for eyes. After that, paint the nose orange and draw on the mouth with a permanent marker. It may help to sketch out the face with a pencil beforehand. Then grab an old pair of jeans and cut some of the fabric off. Attach the denim to the 3rd pot using Mod Podge. Add another layer on top to solidify. Now it's time to assemble. Using some silicone, glue the pots together and let dry. Finally, add some finishing touches to make your scarecrow come to life. Some extra straw and a rope belt.
I took a couple of pots and played with how I could get them to fit together. I would put one pot inside of a larger one and then add the bottom tray and then put another pot on top. I used a hot glue gun to seal up the holes at the bottom, so I ended up taking a layer of Flex Seal and spraying it on the inside as well. I checked to make sure that my pot was watertight and then I was ready to go. I filled it up with water. Since I wanted the fountain to work by itself outside and I didn't want to worry about changing batteries, I purchased a solar-powered fountain. I wanted to decorate it to go with my fall decor, and so I used some leaves and a few other things just to kind of cover up any rough spots on the pot and to make it look decorative and festive and perfect for my holiday decor.
We're going to begin with 4 6-inch pots. Then what we're going to do is we're going to spray paint them. So we're going to place some cold glue all the way around the surface of this, and then we're going to take our second pot and stack it just like that. I also painted a version in this gloss green. Now we have some cold glue on top of the buttons, and now we can place them right to the pot. So for the hair, I have some orange yarn. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take our yarn and we're going to fold it over a bunch of times. And we're going to tie this right in the middle, and that's going to keep all of our hair secured. Once you have your desired amount of hair, you're going to cut it off. Now we're going to feed that yarn through the middle of the head until the hair is just sitting on either end. Add some of that cold glue to the surface and then place the head right on top. We also painted little arms, and we're going to just secure those right to the side. Now we're going to take this adorable dollar store hat and place it right on top.
You're going to need 4 tiny pots. Mine are 2 inches, a medium pot, and a large pot. You're also going to need a saucer. I cleaned them up, pulled off the price tags, and now I'm going to paint them. I'm using a white chalk paint. It absorbs nicely and dries quickly. Once all the pots are painted and everything is dry, I'm going to start drawing on some details. I'm going to turn these into cows. So I need to make the spots for the cows. And I'm just going to draw those in with a pencil and then paint on some brown paint. You can freehand this, you can get creative and really do whatever you want with these spots. While that's drying, I'm going to grab some rope. This is clothesline from Dollar Tree. You could also use some brown rope as well, whatever you choose. I'm going to tie a knot on one end and trim off the excess. Now I'm going to attach the knot to the top of the smallest pot. Now on the saucer, this is going to be the nose of the cow, so we want to draw and paint some little nostrils. Then on the medium pot, we're going to draw some eyes. I'm starting with a pencil, and then I'm going to go in with black and white paint markers to finish this off. To add ears, I'm using craft foam because this is going to be nice and durable. Now we can start putting this together. So I'm using that really strong craft glue again. This is just like an E6000. It's going to hold everything together and keep it secure. And then on the back, I'm going to glue on the ears. For the arms and legs, I'm going to thread the rope through the whole of the body, tie it into a knot and use some glue to secure it. And then for the legs, I'm going to glue them to the inside of the bottom. Finally, for the head, I'm going to put this in place and glue it and put something heavy on it to hold it in place.
are in the market for a couple of side tables or nightstands, consider an old vintage vanity instead. First up, I need to take it apart. I'm removing all the drawers, then studying how the vanity is built. Since this vanity is nailed together, I'm wedging a pry bar between the backboard and vanity, then hitting it with a rubber mallet to pull the boards apart. Now I'm checking where all the nails and joins are and removing whatever nails I can with a nail remover tool. However, for the most part, the crowbars, lots of pounding, and finally pulling apart the pieces by hand did the trick. Now I'm removing all the knobs from the drawers and attaching the original screws into the back so they don't get lost. I'm placing all the drawers onto some butcher paper with the varnished sides facing up along with the vanity. To strip off the varnish, I'm using a product called QCS by Stripwell, which is a non-toxic remover. I'm spraying the remover on all the varnished tops of the vanity and drawer tops, then allowing the product to sit for about 10 minutes. Using a putty knife, I'm scraping off the varnish. Most of the pieces needed 2 passes for everything. Now using a surface cleanser, I'm spraying it wherever the varnish was removed, then wiping the furniture clean with a rag. Next up is repairing the sides. Using an orbital sander, I'm sanding over the damaged areas of the nightstands, plus also scuff sanding the rest of the sides to prepare them for the next step. I'm using a putty knife to apply wood filler to smooth out any indents, nooks, and crannies. Some of the holes were very deep, so they required 2 coats with drying time in between. After several days of drying time, I'm sanding the putty smooth, then following up with an orbital sander to areas that needed a little extra work. Now I'm removing all the sanding dust using a tack cloth. Choosing a deep and beautiful paint color called Cast Iron by Fusion Mineral Paint, I'm painting all the small trim work with a smaller artist's brush. Since the sides are smooth and large, I'm choosing to paint them using a high-quality Stallmeister velour roller I pick up through Fusion Mineral Paint to achieve a flawless finish with no brush strokes. I'm rolling on the paint with long, even strokes with an attempt to always work against a wet paint edge. What works best is to roll on all the paint, then slowly roll over it again from end to end with no stops in between to achieve the smoothest finish possible. To paint the drawer pulls, I'm using the screws to hold the knobs while I paint, then setting them down on egg cartons to dry. Now that the paint has set, I'm removing the painter's tape to allow the piece to completely dry. To protect the fronts of the drawers and the tops of the nightstands, I'm using Stain and Finishing Oil in Natural by Fusion Mineral Paint. This is a very easy wipe-on, wipe-off product to work with, and the durability it offers is floor quality. I'm brushing on the Stain and Finishing Oil until my chosen surface is completely covered, allowing it to sit for a few minutes, then wiping the product back off again with a clean lint-free rag. I allow this product to dry overnight. Once the paint has cured for about 30 days, I'll also be adding a coat of natural Stain and Finishing Oil on that as well for added furniture durability. And the final result are 2 absolutely stunning high-quality nightstands or side tables that are customized to suit my home. The tone of wood now looks so fresh and rich and feels as smooth as silk, which really pops against the decadent deep tone of cast iron, making this a gorgeous and timeless combination.
A mop head. I was positive I could make something great with this. First, you will need to dismantle the mop head. The pieces of mop are already cut into equal-sized lengths. If you choose to paint the mop head materials, make sure to first base coat the foam circle in the same color that you will be painting the fabric, so that the foam does not show through. Take a piece of the mop and loop it in half. Wrap it around the foam circle and pull the ends through the looped end. Pull tight. Then press the looped area down so that the looped end rests on your counter. Repeat all the way around the foam circle until you have it all filled in. Next, it's time to stiffen the mop strands so that they will stand out straight from the foam circle. And for this, you will need a lot of Mod Podge. Test and make sure that the strands are completely dry and stiff. If some are not stiff, recoat and once again leave to dry. Now comes the fun part. I played around with many different alternatives. I felt it needed one more thing, so I added a round mirror behind the mop wreath with hot glue. Adding a mirror to wreaths always makes it more interesting, as you will see reflections in it once it is hung. To decorate the wreath, I created a simple bow with the floral burlap ribbon and glued it on the front. Look how pretty it looks on the French door to my cute little greenhouse. Adding the mirror is perfect because look how it captures beautiful reflections like my colorful basket hanging nearby. If neutral isn't your thing, then here is another option. Using a sponge brush, coat all the sides of the mop strands with paint. As it was the end of summer and the beginning of fall, I decided a nice yellow and orange color scheme would be appropriate. Painting it like the sun with the lightest yellow color in the center and a soft peachy orange color in the middle of the strands, and then a deep orange on the outer tips. Like working with Mod Podge, you need to thoroughly coat all sides of the mop material with paint or the white foam will show through and spoil the effect. It is pretty cute and cheery whether on my greenhouse door or my garden gates. I'm sure it'll bring a smile to your face.
To start this project, you're going to need a wire wreath form and 4 dust mops from the dollar store. Next, what I'm going to do is fold the mop in half, and I'm going to use my fabric scissors to cut the mop in half. Now what I have here is 4 mops that I have cut in half, so 8 total pieces. I'm going to take half of the mop, and I have flipped my wire wreath form upside down or backwards. And now what I'm going to be doing is folding the mop over like this. So I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to add a little hot glue in here. And then I'm going to fold the bottom up and press that into place. And then I'm going to be adding some more hot glue and then folding the top part down. And I'll need to hold these in place until they cool completely. I'll continue doing this until all of the mop pieces are attached to the entire wreath form. You'll notice that I left the center open on the back side. This is an important step because next I'll be using some battery operated LED lights. I'm going to take the battery pack and I'm going to wrap the wire, the extra wire around it. I need to be able to reach the on off switch. Once I get those all in place, I'm going to go ahead and hot glue all of that wire into place so that it stays nicely. Once all of that is in place, I'm going to flip the wreath form over. Next, I've got some dollar store bulbs. Now you could easily leave this wreath as is, but I'm going to update it with a little bit of bulbs. So I'm going to cut the bulbs open and I'm going to place those bulbs onto the wire wreath form about where I want them to be. Now I'm going to be using blue and silver, and part of my reason for this is that blue and silver are great for winter. So I'll be able to leave this wreath up for 3 months rather than just a holiday. I can leave it up for an entire season. And I hope this inspires you to create a dollar store winter wreath of your own.
I picked out a pool float and inflated it outside using an air compressor, which you guys makes it so easy to do. So after making sure that it's fully inflated, we're going to secure a wire to it. And we're gonna use a thinly gauged piece of wire. This is a very soft wire, so it's not going to pierce the balloon. And then we're gonna take the wire and tie it around the pool float, just like that. So now we just have some greenery. You can find this greenery, the rose gold bay leaves and the wire from nixseasonaldecor.com. We're gonna just simply lay that greenery on top of the wire. And what I'm actually doing is I'm taking the stems, and typically if this was a wreath, we would remove them. But for this, I'm actually gonna just bend them up, and that way it's gonna provide a little bit more reinforcement for the wire to adhere to. Now that we have these in place, we can take that wire and bring it from either side and tie it right on. Now it's time to make a bow. So we just have this 1.5 inch champagne ribbon, and it matches the ivory on the pool float perfectly. And all we're gonna do is make a bunch of loops. So we're creating loops about 4 inches across, but keep in mind there are so many types of pool floats out there. There are these ones that look like donuts that we have here. There are, Christmas trees. You can actually find Christmas and winter, like let's say snowflakes, in pool float form. And now we can snip off the ribbon. I always like to snip it off with a little bit of an overhang so that when we secure our wire, we're not going to pose the risk of accidentally pulling one of these loops out. Now what we're going to do is just simply put that right between the wires that we initially placed. And now what we can do is we can fluff these loops open. To hang this, I just cut a length of ribbon, and all we're going to do is just tie it right to the top of the pool float. And tie it nice and tight so that it doesn't swivel around. And now you can tie this to a command strip, you can tie this to a wreath hook, you can tie this anywhere. And here is how it turned out, you guys, and I absolutely love it. So what an easy idea, turning a pool float into a beautiful Christmas wreath or winter wreath, since we used rose gold, champagne, and a little bit of greenery. And once you're done, snip off that wire and then you have a pool float to use during the summer.